Now I'd like to introduce our presenter for today. He's well known to SAEG members and with many years of experience in capital expenditure management. It's Richard Frickberg, who's the Chief Executive Officer of IQX Business Solutions. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you everyone for your time this morning as we discuss my favorite topic, how to accelerate CapEx approvals and project creation. So from my experience, and I assume from yours too, being on this call, that you're experiencing some of the common pain points with respect to capital project approval and setup in SAP. All of us who have tried to get our projects over the line, waiting desperately for those final approvals, will know how frustrating that might be. Even once we get the approval, it can sometimes still take a little while to get the projects set up correctly in our back-end systems. For those of us who are SAP experts, we might be frustrated that our organization still is using good old-fashioned internal orders to control these projects, even though we've been petitioning for the use of the project system because of its additional capabilities, and wondering why we're still where we are, or as is predominant, we're still in an environment of spreadsheet chaos, with spreadsheets being a key dependency in the whole CapEx approval and project setup business process. So that's what I'm seeing in the market. I'd be interested just to get some feedback from everyone on the call. Just how are they experiencing this problem today? Are any of these issues familiar in your environment? Michael, if you can launch the survey, let's just see where we sit.
Sure. Yep, everyone should be receiving that or seeing that poll there. So if you could answer, you can please select all that apply to you. So we've got transparency and speed of CapEx approval, delays and inaccuracies in project setup. There's continued use of internal orders, inconsistent WBS structures, and lack of plan and budget comparison reporting in SAP. So we'll leave that open for maybe another 40 seconds, but definitely so far, Richard, the continued use of internal orders is way out in front. But we'll keep that open, and then we'll go through the results. Thank you, everyone who is. A lot of people are responding and filling in that poll. So if you can just do that, just keep it on for just a little bit longer. Okay, we'll probably close it in about 5 seconds.
Should actually have had the point in there about over-reliance on spreadsheets, but I'm sure that would have.
That seems to be the
winning vote.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll close that. So yes, the two that came out in front was continued at about 72% was continued use of internal orders, and with the same amount, lack of plan and budget comparison reporting. So they came out in front. Second was inconsistent WBS structures at about 57%. Then there was delays and inaccuracies in project setup at 43%, and at the bottom it was transparency and speed of CapEx approval.
Okay.
So,
well, that's good.
Is that what you were expecting, Richard, or a little bit different to what?
No, that's good. I mean, typically the workflow problem and approvals has been a frustration and a pain point. But interested to hear that even once we're over that hurdle, we're still having the challenges getting the most out of our SAP system, which I guess is all the other items we're talking to, right? We know we have a powerful engine, and it is a bit frustrating when we're only using part of that capability to address this very important business process area. Because from a business process impact perspective, what does slow approvals mean? And really, the big business challenge there is it means our projects start late. And if projects start late, they finish late. And if they finish late, our expected benefits, whether they're growth or savings related, are deferred, right? So to be more successful as an organization, we need to get these important projects done quicker. As soon as we have a lot of manual processes involved, there's the risk of errors, it's inefficient, obviously, to have skilled people performing manual tasks, and there's compliance and control risks associated with those manual processes. So we really are seeking additional automation in the whole flow. The visibility around your plans and budgets in SAP ultimately leads to a potential, lack of accountability and control, and inability to adjust when things are going out of sequence. And in general, slowing down these critical business processes does diminish our flexibility and agility to adapt to a very dynamic operating environment that we all operate in. And as we know, these capital projects are really mission critical, right, for each of our organizations' competitive success. So if we look a little bit down at the root cause of some of these delays, and it sounded like approval delays wasn't too much of an issue, so we don't need to spend too long here, but one of the reasons workflows tend to take too long is sometimes we include too many people in the workflow. This can particularly be the case, where the workflow routing isn't, automatically triggered, but people need to, follow the DOA rules and remember who to include. And for the avoidance of doubt, sometimes include too many people and takes too long. So it's workflow optimizations by getting all the right people, looking at these initiatives in the right sequence, and that might be in parallel wherever possible, to make quick and informed decisions. One of the common problems with workflow approval is email. We still rely heavily on getting our email notifications, and sometimes that just gets lost in our clutter. You see it and you click it, and then it's no longer bold, and you forget about it, and then somebody's still waiting for their project approval. So how do we eliminate email clutter? But probably the biggest cause of approval delays is when the managers do get the approval task for their CapEx project, that they find that the data contained in it is incomplete, and they have to go back and ask for some more information, whether that's a classification or a supporting document. When they do see their business case benefits and calculated IRRs or payback periods, they're a little bit suspicious of those numbers because they've been calculated on a spreadsheet, and everyone knows about lies, damn lies, and spreadsheets, and really trying to understand whether those numbers are legit is stressful for those decision makers when they're signing off on often multi-million-dollar capital investments. They're relying on a spreadsheet model. There's often questions and answers that have been asked before, often in a long email chain, and they might not be at hand, and they have to go ask somebody, has this been answered? And in general, when you're approving CapEx, there's always a fear of missing out. If I approve this project and allocate my available budget capacity to this project, what am I missing out on? What's in the backlog? What's in my queue? Because at the end of the day, I need to approve the most valuable initiatives, not the sequence that come to my desk. And in my experience, the most useful bit of information in any CapEx request is the audit trail of who approved it previously. Ultimately, senior executives, don't have the time to do all the detailed verification analysis themselves, and they rely heavily on their tenants to do the detailed reviews. But they just need to know that their trusted subordinate has already reviewed the project and given it the all clear. When it comes to project setup delays, I think part of the problem is that it is manual, and as a result, it's inherently inaccurate, and it takes a little bit of time because there's only a limited number of people who have access to the transaction codes. So the reason it's manual is because the input form itself, is not in sufficiently standardized format to allow for automation. So if your input is a SharePoint form or an Excel spreadsheet or Word document or PDF request, how do you convert that into a project in SAP? Well, the answer is not easily. So it's not the fault of the people creating the transaction, you're creating the projects in the system. It's really one step before that. It's that the form that triggers the creation of the projects is not sufficiently well structured or defined to allow for automation. And to the point of why we're still using internal orders when we know that projects would be much more effective, particularly when we're dealing with more complex projects involving multiple asset types with interdependencies, third-party dependencies. It's much better to have a single project definition with a series of work breakdown structures that address each element of the project and the scheduling of each element of the project and the planning and budgeting of each element of the project. And if we've got one internal order, or multiple internal orders to tie together an internal order group, it's much harder to really look at that whole project holistically. And because of somewhat the manual complexity of getting this master data into the system, we sometimes don't get the plan or budget loaded, and therefore are heavily reliant on extracting our actuals out of SAP and combining it with our plans and budgets that in many cases sit in a spreadsheet to do effective project monitoring and analysis. So sometimes it feels like we're still trying to row the boat, even though we've got this fantastic engine in SAP. We know we're not making full use of it, and it does really come down to, I think, fear of the complexity of the user experience of creating projects, and not the core functionality itself. So if we could just make it easier to create the projects accurately from an end user perspective and have that complexity dealt with systematically, we could make more use of the capabilities in our SAP systems and get more value from project administration and control. So what does the solution look like? In our view, it's about really simplifying and standardizing the approval workflows, enabling data-driven decision-making with a well-defined and consistent business case definition, consistent calculation of those financial metrics, enforcing completeness of data classification at point of entry. So by the time it reaches the decision makers, they have all the information at hand to make confident business decisions. Really want to streamline and automate the setup of your SAP master data. Your internal orders where it's simple, right? If you're just acquiring a new forklift, maybe an internal order is good enough to control that cost. But if you are building a new distribution center, with multiple asset types involved and subcontractors, you need much more sophisticated piece of master data in SAP, which is your project systems, and you need to make sure that those can be set up, in accordance with the standard structure to facilitate monitoring and control. And basically, we need to drive automation for speed, transparency, and control. So how do we do those things? So our approach at RQX is we've got three really important pieces to the puzzle. At the front end, we have our SaaS tool, which is called Stratex Online. And that's really all about preparing high quality business cases that are going to facilitate that confident decision making, ensure that when the managers get these CapEx requests, they don't have to ask anybody anything else, they can just approve. OneList is a tool we've had on the market for a long time, and its key purpose really is to eliminate that email clutter problem and deliver the approval task to managers wherever they are, on their phone, on their iPads, on their laptops, in email, in browser. So it's a universal access to one consolidated list of approval tasks. And then Fiori has been a major tool of ours for automating the project creation in a more user-friendly way. Yeah, so anyone who's familiar with SAP project systems can be a bit overwhelmed. It's not a tool that you can easily roll out to the project managers themselves. It's too risky. There's too many fields on too many tabs to get it right. So with a Fiori front end to that project creation process, we feel that you can democratize that process and give everyone the opportunity to get those definitions right in a simplified way and consistently apply the business rules behind the scenes in relation to how you classify those projects, how you define the WBS elements, how you set up your plans and budgets, all off kind of a single control point, which is a workflow-enabled Fiori app. So my goal today is to run through a bit of a demo of all of those tools to give you a feel for how they work, but just a little bit of a justification of why we went down this path of a SaaS tool for the CapEx business case and approval process. And I guess firstly, there is no standard SAP functionality to build a financial analysis model, right? So if you are trying to understand your costs and benefits and timing of those cash flows and really calculate a reliable NPV or payback period, the main choice today is Excel. So our main idea for Stratex is to replace Excel, with a digital solution that handles that functionality. We also find that in larger groups, particularly successful growing organizations, not every business unit runs SAP yet. So as we bring on those new business units and transition them into our SAP system, there's still a window of opportunity where we need an organizational or a global tool to manage these global initiatives, irrespective of the current ERP system in operation. We also wanted the tool to be as flexible as possible to keep the process owners in control. That's the flexibility they have from Excel, why they love Excel. And we didn't want to lose that their flexibility and self-sufficiency that they have with familiar tools like Excel. So that's always been front of mind in our thinking. And we wanted to be quick, to deploy. SaaS is the way. SAP will guide you down that path as well. If it's not in SAP standard functionality, look for a SaaS solution. Obviously, there's no infrastructure to deploy, no reliance on SharePoint or any other tooling to get the solution up and running. And being on a SaaS platform, you're able to scale, from very discrete departments. Well, let's start using this in IT, all the way through to a global solution. And we have a number of global enterprises using this worldwide today. And because it's a new tool based on the latest technologies and not a legacy tool that we've tried to transition into the cloud, we're able to deliver it at an unparalleled cost. I think great value for money. So that's kind of a justification for why SaaS, why OneList. We've talked a little bit about email clutter, and I'll show that. But it's really, call it OneList because it's not just these CapEx approval tasks. It's also later on the purchase orders, and then the supplier onboarding, and then the invoice approval, the timesheet approval. So there's a lot of approval tasks in a capital project, and we want to make it simple for the senior execs. One place to go to find all those approval tasks, whether they're SAP tasks, Ariba tasks, SuccessFactors tasks, or Stratex tasks. They're in OneList. And our experience is that the cumulative effect of reducing the time to approve each step in a multi-step approval cycle literally reduces the whole cycle from often weeks, because one person is stuck in one person's queue, to hours or days to get these requests through the chain. And then Fiori, we'll have a look at that. But there's two real options of, once CapEx is approved, how you're going to digitalize the project creation SAP. One option is to build those rules in the middleware and do a lot of orchestration outside SAP, calling SAP APIs. Unfortunately, there are API limitations, and there are some, steps around changing statuses or, assigning particular settlement rules, etc., which we do need to work around even with old-fashioned BDCs and other direct function module calls. So they're not all the APIs to be able to do this externally anyway, but also by being inside the SAP technology stack when it comes to the unique project structure that you have and adapting to your classifications and business rules. Being inside SAP, using SAP resources, we're able to ensure that the projects are created effectively and in line with your design. So we can really accommodate the uniqueness of your environment. So with Santos, for example, creating a project in a oil and gas industry with a lot of joint ventures is extremely complex. Might be different in a manufacturing site. So every organization needs customization of the way that the projects are created, and we can achieve that with our Fiori app, default apps, and a low-code configuration tool. All right, so that's a bit of the justification. We'll try a little bit of a live demo because that's always more interesting for me as well, because something probably won't work, but here we go. So I've got the 3 tools loaded up, Stratex, OneList, and Fiori apps, just to give you a sense of how these tools work. When it comes to creating a business case, I'm going to copy one that I've done recently, but I'll call this a SORG CapEx management business case. A typical business case captures information like what's the problem, what does the solution look like, what's your primary investment reason, is this all about replacing an existing asset or going to generate some additional revenue or savings. Hopefully a new CapEx management solution is going to generate both savings and growth. So we're excited about that. It's an IT asset, so we can do some reporting on our backlog by these investment reasons and the types of assets involved. As we go through the business case, it's obviously assigned to a particular area, within a multi tiered organizational structure. The associated with those benefiting or sponsoring areas are particular individuals. I've set myself up as the approval here so I can show it. There's different ways we can capture the urgency of the project, from simple ABC classifications to heat maps of likelihood and consequence of failure if we don't replace this item this year. So we can really drive the prioritization of CapEx requests based on a well thought through urgency matrix. Whenever there's a business case, there's always options, and executives always want to know what is the second option. So we've got a couple of options loaded here. Each option can be described in terms of the solution and the benefits. And this is where it gets interesting, where we start putting in a financial analysis behind the cost. So as opposed to an Excel financial analysis, what we provide in our Stratex tool is a simplified way of generating these key financial metrics around internal rate of return and payback. So you define some of these templates from an end user perspective. These templates, have some input variables, and for all familiar project types, all the requester will have to do is say, okay, what's the perpetual license fee? Or well, in the case of Stratex, there's 0. How many consulting days? Or let's say there's 3 months worth. In the simplest case, maybe it's 20 days, and you do a lot of the work yourself. For some of our global rollouts, it can be more like 6 months of a consultant. So we can put in some sensitivity around some of these input parameters. We can say, how much is this going to save you? Well, maybe it's 2 people, a month. Maybe it's 20,000 or whatever, 15,000. So you can change your input parameters. That automatically changes your financial metrics in a consistent way based on the organizational entities, discount rates, tax rates, because behind the scenes, what we have is a financial analysis model, which looks at these work breakdown structure cost components over time, or as pretty much like a spreadsheet view. In these views, we define the cash flow profiles. So, for example, this consulting services was a linear flat, which means it's spread equally. We can change these to a on completion. That's where the cash flow is going to be. So, taking into account the cash flow model, we can make these manual and type in the individual values. We've really got a sense of dependency of timing as well. If one work breakdown structure element succeeds another, we can see what impact that'll have to our timing of our cash flows and our benefit realization and our payback. We could generate those sensitivity analysis calculations based on my sensitivity conditions around best and worst case, for example, and see that in all cases I've got a acceptable payback period, if that's a key metric that you work with. So that's a little bit about how this tool supports the financial analysis calculations to generate those common key financial metrics and cash flow demands of the project. We can see in here, what is my my confidence of successful delivery. So you build your own set of questions and answers, but some of the things you might want to think about when you're looking at your risk of implementation is how confident are you with the technology or the contracts or the scope or other aspects. We can also really think about how each initiative relates to strategic priorities, which will change over time. Sometimes, our strategic priority is to cut costs. Sometimes it's to grow as fast as possible. Sometimes it's, around environmental sustainability. So we'll have some key initiatives or strategic objectives, and we can really closely align our CapEx items to those strategic goals of the area. And then we generate, for our various options, some high-level scoring, such as this. Now, the scoring is just a ranking concept. It doesn't mean that 8 is necessarily going to, a pass mark. It means that if we have to make choices, we can, rank according to our assessments, our weighting of these various dimensions, and projects with a high score are most likely to be approved, with a low score are least likely, and the least management attention, can then be focused in the middle. In these initiatives, we can mandate the attachment of supporting documents at various stages in the process. So here, for example, I'll add a supplier quotation. I can also start a conversation directly in the tool with any of the participants, and this will collect, a history of questions and answers inside the tool, so you don't have to go searching for the emails related to this project. And we can link and relate projects to each other. So this one is dependent on or alternative to another project, various relationship types. So that's a brief demonstration of the business case tooling. Once that's submitted, we have the option to access those on our mobile devices. So I won't attempt to connect my mobile phone here for the moment, but I will just refresh my OneList. You can imagine, I guess this could be looking a bit like a phone. So I get a push notification on my phone. I see a little badge count on my phone that I've got a new business case to approve. On my phone, I can pick it up. I can read the details. I can say that sounds like a good idea, and make a quick approval decision. So that's OneList. And as I mentioned, the idea is it's available, as an add-in to Outlook, as actually a browser extension, as a web app, as an email app. It can send you the emails and you can approve on the button and email. And most importantly, as a mobile app, always accessible next to your text messages with a badge count, so we know exactly what's in your list still to do. All right, so once it's approved via OneList, you'll see if I come in here, this has, sorry, this is a different one. all the initiatives. Let me just go back to my one. It should be a business case. So there's the SORG CapEx business case. That was the first approval. Now, as an admin, I'm just going to approve this on behalf of a few people, but what I can see, now it's going for local accounting approval. At any stage, I can see, who's involved in the approval chain. And as I'm approving on behalf of these people, we'll see, the audit trail being updated accordingly. So I'll just complete that approval process within the tool. That's why it happens in hours and not days, because I just do it myself. No, not really. Once it reaches this CapEx requested stage, so it's gone through all the delegation of authority levels. And by the way, those are very easily configured here in the tool. We have an approval matrix where you can define based on your levels, your values and your reasons, who's involved, what roles involved, and then those agents for those roles are assigned via the org structure or globally. So very flexible workflow definition, very easy to maintain. Once it's approved, as promised, it will appear in our Fiori app. So we have a bunch of Fiori apps. The one I'm profiling today is the project creation Fiori app. So that information that we captured in our business case and approved in OneList is now available in Fiori. This gives us an opportunity to extend the classification. So if you have some unique classifications of your projects in SAP, we can capture them here. Let's say we wanted to put on the scale of the project, we could just enter it in the Fiori app, or we could have added a custom field to Stratex and just pass that information through, and we can map custom fields from Stratex into your custom classifications in SAP zero code. The other thing that we can do in Fiori is apply your particular, project numbering convention. Those are very hard to change in an organization. Your engineers are passionate about the numbering sequence. So we'll just bring in the raw data, and then we can apply your unique numbering or project templates. On the way through, if desired, you could even, extend the work breakdown structure directly here within the Fiori app. The plan, we can decide whether we're going to post a plan and budget, or just plan or just budget, but all those values that we had from the business case flow in here with our CapEx OpEx split, as well as our fiscal year spread. It does follow a bit of a workflow process. So if we needed to route project creation to particular teams based on the area that they relate to, we can do that. Within the Fiori app, and for this demonstration, I've left it as a manual activity. This could just have been an automated process and only assigned to a person if it had failed. But for demonstration purposes, I've left that approval step in here. So now I can look on my my action by me list. And I should see, I saw something break, my recently approved SORG request. And what it will do is it will go through and it's linked back to the financial analysis, the Stratex initiative, but it'll go and create a project in SAP. And then that project code will be assigned back in Stratex. I'm very surprised that it's not here. Anyway, if I go back to, yeah, it was actually approved. So the project has been created in SAP. My CapEx request has transitioned from business case to project. The full amount was approved by the executive team. If I drill down here, I can see that the project that was created was C1161. And if I really wanted to visualize that in SAP, I guess we could go into our project creation, famous project builder, and there's our SORG project having been created in SAP with plans and budgets assigned. Yeah. Okay, so hopefully that gave you a bit of a feel for our approach to the problem around defining effective business cases in Stratex, providing an effective approval interface in OneList on your phone, controlling the creation of the project and the orchestration of those related transactions in Fiori. And hopefully that's of interest. So what we think, the benefits are and what our customers are seeing is from it's basically three main pillars of wins from investing in digitalization of this CapEx approval and project creation. I think the first one is to save money through automation and increased productivity. We're applying people's time where it matters most and not in the manual setup or chasing of CapEx approvals, and hopefully with more rigorous business case definitions and financial analysis, we can trap bad projects being initiated before we spend money and stop them halfway through. So save money, really help make money by effectively scoring and ranking initiatives as they come through, giving that transparency of the backlog, so managers feel like they're approving the projects that are going to matter most first, and really through effective digitalization and automation ultimately allow the organization to be more agile and strategically aligned in a very dynamic world, to ultimately improve governance through effective planning and budgeting and monitoring of the process, as well as the actual costs and commitments as they occurred, so we can take corrective actions when project experience doesn't line up with our project forecast or budget. So hopefully that's of interest. Love to run you through a more detailed demo if you're interested in any of that. There's a QR code you can scan, or you can just search for RQX CapEx demo. We'd love to show you how we could help accelerate and control project creation in your environment, and maybe even transition from internal orders to project systems, given that it doesn't have to be scary for the end users. Yeah, it can be completely transparent to them whether it's an internal order or a project, other than they're going to get a lot better control and reporting out of SAP. All right, thanks for hanging in there. We've got a few minutes left, which is good. I did rush through it. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Yeah, so if anyone has questions, just reminding you that you use the question function on your screen there, and we'll try to get through those. I do have one here. If I can get to it, Richard. Yeah, it's how do you integrate between SaaS and SAP? So basically the SaaS model and SAP.
Yeah, that's a good question. So a lot of our customers are now using SAP BTP integration services. So that's an effective middleware route. So we have our flow pre-configuration that we can provide to, through a messaging protocol, pick up the completed projects from Stratex and route those through to SAP, where we receive them and create the Fiori app. So it's quite a straightforward integration flow, but it gives you that governance and control through the through the middleware layer. But you can also use Boomi or MuleSoft or any other middleware tool, or even, we support a direct connect from SAP to Stratex to supply the integration out of the box.
Great. I do have a question here, Richard. Yeah, and I know you mentioned speed of implementation. Someone actually asked, how long would a typical sort of implementation take?
Yeah, so in a greenfields, I guess, it can be days, because you've got, we've got all the components, but none of us, I suppose, are greenfield. So we have to adapt to the current way that projects are being set up in your environment, and where you might be raising purchase orders, and where you might be sourcing responsibility areas from. So there can be some integration effort and change management effort and process redesign effort. So the typical consulting answers, it does vary, but we've had very small organizations become totally self-sufficient within days of training and installation. To got a couple of projects going live in the US actually at the end of this month, that have been 6 months in the running, but with large multinational teams involved in the process redesign, and using this as an opportunity to standardize business processes across the world, and enhance the classification and control of these projects. So there is a change management dimension to it if you use this as a way to improve your end-to-end process. So that's where it takes longer, but gives you more valuable outcomes.